Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do a video that I got from another YouTuber. Her first name is Rachel. I'm not 100% on her last name, so I'm not going to try and pronounce it. I will link her channel down below, but it is palettes with unique color stories. I have quite a few. There's like 15 or 16. I have several from the same brand, so I'll try and lump those together so that this video is not terribly long, and I don't think I'm going to swatch a lot also to keep the length down. But if you want to see what palettes I pulled, stick around. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. Give this video a thumbs up if you like this style of ranking. And yeah, let's jump into the video. Okay, so these are not in any particular order. I just started pulling palettes. I probably could have split this into two videos. I probably have enough that I could do a second part. Even with what's here, I could probably do another round, but we'll keep it to this. Like I said, I think there's 15 or 16 here. I'm not 100% because after I had the stack, I pulled some more. So they are not in any particular order. First, we have the Spooked palette from Gourmand Girls and Doodles by the Bunny, I think. This was a Halloween palette they came out with. This is the first and only palette I have from this brand, but I love Halloween. Sorry, my stack is kind of in frame here. And I just thought this was a really unique, not only unique palette, but unique for a Halloween color story. Because while you have traditional black, like orange and green, purple, there's a red, it's like slightly off. Like it's a limey green. I don't know. I really like the colors that they chose. And like this pumpkin, I think there's some duochromes in here. This pumpkin shade is very, very interesting. Bunch of different formulas in this palette. So you can see it kind of shifts to a yellow. There's an orange. There's a little bit of pink in there. Very, very pretty. I like that you've got kind of an army green. I do find, I think there's a towel behind me here, that I have used this a couple of times. I've used it on its own, and you can use it on its own, which I think is nice, but I've also been able to bring in other palettes just for blending purposes, and it works pretty well with other formulas, which is nice. Quite a few of these palettes this included was limited edition. This isn't available anymore. I'm hoping that they either bring this back this October or like a part 2 maybe would be nice, because it seems like there's still some interest in this palette. They did restock it, or at least it was in stock for a while, so it wasn't one of those immediate like sellouts where people couldn't get their hands on it, so that was nice. This is the only palette that I have from Adept Cosmetics. It's a little bit dusty because it's just been sitting out. I've been meaning to use it and I haven't. This is the Amunet. This is the dark version. The only difference between the light and the dark is the light doesn't have the blue. It's a different shade. Everything else I think is the same. There's a couple of different shimmer formulas in here. Adept palettes are very shimmer heavy. They're not matte heavy. That's just from what I've seen. That's the way the brand does their palettes. So if you like more mattes and shimmers, their palettes probably aren't for you. This one had the most mattes when I was looking at a palette to try from them. This one has 5. Generally, there's only like 4. So this had one more matte. So if you're interested in Adept, I think this would probably be a good way to go because it's split down the middle. But there's some interesting shimmer formulas. Like this one's very slick feeling. This is in Hawthorne. There it is right there. So you get a bunch of different formulas. I haven't actually used this, but I like that it's not a traditional like neutral palette. And I went with the dark because of the blue. And then you have this purple, gray, brown. So it is a pretty color story, not just a basic neutral palette. One that I thought I would mention, and I have 2 from this brand. This is the Be Bella Cosmetics. This is the Life in Pastels. I don't have a ton of pastel palettes, but I like that this one's a little bit brighter. You've got several blues, you got a purple, there's some pinks. I like that these yellow and green are kind of grungier leaning. I think there's one pressed glitter in this palette. The other palette I have from them is a red, like Valentine themes palette, and I think that one has a pressed glitter too. I don't mind the pressed glitter, and their pressed glitter formula is really nice. You don't need a glitter glue. It's pretty emollient on its own. But I just like that it's not what I would consider a traditional pastel palette. It's got a little bit of a twist to it, and it's fun colored. It's rainbow, but it's a lighter rainbow. Okay, the next one, and this one was in Rachel's ranking. A few of these probably are. This is the Blend Bunnies All Done Up palette. This is the only palette I have from them also. I went with this one because it's a little bit smaller. It was a little bit cheaper than some of her larger palettes, and it's a grungy color story. Like, this is a neutral palette, but it's a neutral palette with a twist. And I've heard from watching reviews that this palette has some of the best shimmers from the brand in it, so you'll have to let me know if you've tried a bunch from them. I have not used this yet, but I was really drawn to kind of these center shades in here, so definitely very, very pretty alternative neutral palette. To stick these right here. I have two, I own three from Shroud, but I pulled two. I have the Batty Bean collabs for first and second, so we'll show them together. She did the Freakin' Bats palette, I think 2 years ago, and then she came out with the Halloween one, which is the Hello Bean, which again is a very Halloween inspired palette, but with a twist. So you've got grungy shades. The orange is grungy, the green, the yellow, these are all like grungy Halloween tones. And then her other palette, it's Freakin' Bats, which you still can get. This again has grungy toned mattes. The shimmer formula from Shroud is really, really nice. It's very soft, so don't dig in super hard or you're gonna hit pan very quickly. I just like the ones that she's done with them. They're very, very unique color stories, and Shroud, in my opinion, has a good formula. Very, very pigmented, and their shimmers are very impactful, and I think I'm pretty sure there's duochromes, at least in both. There might be. I haven't used the Hello Bean one yet. I bought a bunch of palettes this past Halloween and just never got to them. So, but I like the Bats palette, so I'm sure it's good. Next, we have the Serenity palette. I finally bought this. This was a lot of people's #1 palette last year, and I just think it's got a very unique color story. You do have some neutrals. You could do a neutral look with this if you wanted to, just kind of sticking with this and some of these shades up in here, the greens, but I like that you've got greens and purples and a couple of blues. Very, very pretty color story. The Muse palette is their newest one, which if I pick that up, I'll probably wait a while just because I have so many palettes that I haven't gotten to. Next, we have one of my favorite Huda Beauty palettes. This is the Mercury Retrograde. It took me a long time to buy this palette, and I actually got it in the Advent calendar a couple of years ago, just because it was a good deal. But I really, really like this palette. Again, you can do some pretty neutral, heavy looks with it, but it's got tons of color. You can stick more berry and pink. You can definitely take it more cool toned with some of these blues, but the formulas in here are really, really nice. This one doesn't have that weird like jelly shade like the Naughty palette did, and I think the Empowered might have had that one too, but I really, really like this palette. Next, I pulled out one from Dominique Cosmetics. This is the Celestial Storm. Again, you could do neutral looks with this. You've got some oranges and some grays, so you could keep it neutral. But then you've got purples and teals and pink. And it's just, I don't really hear people talk about Dominique Cosmetics. I don't know. I'll swatch the kind of purpley shade in here just because I don't know if it has to do with her shimmer formula, not me, you know, indie shadows I think have come a long way, and I do think Dominique Cosmetics is more of an indie brand, but I just don't hear people talking about them anymore. I have, I think, 3 of her palettes. We'll go with Kaleidos. I have 2 that I pulled out that I thought were very unique, and this one actually reminds me of one of the Odin's Eye palettes just because it's pinks and greens. The Flower Punk palette, not an everyday color story for sure. And then Club Nebula, which was the Angelica Nyquist collab. Definitely not a traditional color story. You could take it very dark and grungy, and it does have some bright colors in it as well. Very pretty palette. Kaleidos and Odin's Eye probably have my 2 favorite formulas. I have 4 palettes currently from them, and I put all 4 of them in here together. These are the newest 2, and this is a very neutral palette, but I think it's a neutral palette with a twist. You've got purples and greens. You definitely could keep it super neutral, but you can take it more colorful. The Sea Talk palette, again, you could keep it more neutral with this quad down here, but you've got some pretty blues and a pink and a limey green. And then the 2 big ones, there's the Hella, which is Angelica's other collab. Again, it kind of reminds me of the Flower Punk a little bit because you've got the pinks and the greens, but I love this soot shade, and then this multi-chrome and river is really cool. I've used that a lot. And then I didn't get both of their Christmas palettes last year. I just got the Merry Christmas one, but again, I think this is a Christmas, not only a Christmas palette with a twist, but it's just got a unique color story in general. When you look at it, it's got reds and greens, but they're not like, other than the red, the greens are very like one-offs. You got grungy, more tealy. I use this and the Hella palette together quite a lot just because you have a hot pink shade, and there's a lot you can do with this. Tons of variation, especially having that black and this like burgundy brown down here. Gives you a lot of variety for depth in palettes. A palette that I used that's actually on my eyes is the Nomad Verona palette. I pulled this one in because it's new, and I just think the reason I got this for Valentine's Day was because of the color story. You've got the death side, you've got the love side. It's just having the 2 together, I think, makes it very unique. We've got a couple more. We're almost done. I pulled out the, what is this, Dark Magic? Book of Magic. I always call it the wrong thing. This was a limited edition. I wish they would bring this back. There's a couple of palettes that I've seen that look similar to this, so that may be why they haven't, but like, I love that you can do neutral. You've got like a mint, some blues, some purples. It's very unique. And then what is this shade? Crystal. There's a, like, it's a pretty duo. I don't know if you would consider this a multi-chrome, but it's a very pretty like duochrome shade that leans very neutral, so you can put it in with the colorful shadows, or you can do neutral looks with it. Very pretty. I pulled out, and I'm pretty sure this was in Rachel's video too, I pulled out the Star Wars palette. Just because I do think this is a unique color story. Now mine is going to look a little bit different. The original palette, this shade and this shade were both silvers, and I swatched them and I really couldn't tell a difference between the 2, so I actually popped one of them out and put another blue shade so that I would have a shade to help blend out this darker blue that I felt like kind of worked. Like, this can be used, it's almost like a deep periwinkle, can be used on its own, but it works with that shade, and then can be used with some of the neutrals too. So my palette, I think, looks even more unique than the original one, but definitely they did a good job, I think, as far as color story, keeping with the theme of the artwork. Like I said, that blue shade was taken from the all blue palette. So if you have the Star Wars palette and the blue palette and you're wanting to do that, you totally can. There's 3 Hocus Pocus palettes, but I pulled, this is the Hocus Pocus 2 for the newest movie. I just think this is a more unique color story than the other 2. The second Hocus Pocus palette's very neutral heavy with a couple of pops. I think there's an orange and a teal. The first one's a very grungy palette. I just like how bright that this one goes, but then you also have a black in here, so you can go pretty deep, and you can keep it neutral, but I like that these like taupey shades are not just straight brown. So I think there's a lot that you can do with this that makes it a little more unique. And we have 1 palette left. So the Haunted Pumpkin palette from Give Me Glow, and I have used this. Their palettes are very pigmented, but I like that while it's pumpkin patch inspired and this is like Halloween themed, it's not straight orange and green. You do have a bright orange, but the greens are like in Midnight Mist is very grungy leaning, and then you've got teals, and then you've got kind of a grungy orange and a lighter orange. So you can definitely deepen it up, but it's not just straight orange and green. So I like that they very much kept the theme of the artwork on the front of it. So yeah, that is my list. Let me know what you thought of these palettes, and then if there's looks that you want to see me do with any of these, definitely leave those comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Again, make sure you're subscribed, and hopefully I will see you in another video very soon. Bye everybody.